I didn't mean for it to happen this way. But it did. The sound of his chair scraping across the floor still echoes in my head. His breathing turned heavy, ragged, almost animal-like. I froze, clutching the countertop for balance, realizing what I had just done, and what it was about to unleash. Back in index pointing right before I take you deeper into this story, pause for a second. Make sure you subscribe to Secret Woman Stories, hit that like button and share this video with your friends. And in the comments, tell us your city. We love knowing where our sisters are watching from. Now, let me take you back to how it all began. It was an ordinary Wednesday evening. The kind of day where the weight of routine presses against your chest, and you almost forget who you are outside of responsibilities. The kids had gone to bed early, the dishes were stacked high, and the silence in the house felt heavier than usual. He sat in the living room, staring at his phone, scrolling endlessly. No words, no eye contact, just the cold glow of the screen between us. That silence, God, it was deafening. For weeks, maybe months, I had felt invisible. The kind of invisibility that eats away at your confidence. I dressed the same, cooked the same meals, carried the same burdens. I was the wife, the mother, the reliable one. But a woman. Desired. I had stopped feeling that. That night, I walked into the kitchen and stood there for what felt like forever. My mind was racing. I kept thinking, what would it take for him to even notice me again? What if I shocked him? What if I reminded him of the woman he first wanted so badly? My heart pounded so loudly I thought he could hear it from the other room. And then, I did it. I untied my robe, let it slip down my shoulders, and I stepped out bare. I still remember the way the light hit me. How exposed I felt under it. My breath caught in my throat as I walked out of that kitchen, one slow step at a time. He looked up. His phone slipped from his hand. The shock in his eyes quickly turned into something else. Something darker, hungrier. His body stiffened, and then he stood so suddenly his chair toppled backward. For the first time in a long time, his gaze burned into me. And in that moment, I realized I had woken something I wasn't sure I could control. But let me back up for a moment. Because this wasn't just about desire. It wasn't just about shocking him into seeing me again. This was about everything that had led up to this single, fragile moment. Our marriage, on the surface, looked perfect. We had a nice house, 2 beautiful kids, stability. People at church said we were the couple to look up to. But inside, walls had been rising between us. He worked late hours, I carried the house alone, and when he was home, he was present in body but not in spirit. I tried talking. I tried hints. I even tried ignoring him to see if he'd notice. But nothing worked. And so a part of me, a desperate, reckless part, thought maybe desire could rebuild what conversations had failed to fix. Still, even as I stood there bare, my heart in my throat, I wondered, what if I was wrong? What if instead of igniting something, I had just embarrassed myself beyond repair? The seconds stretched out. His breathing grew heavier. My knees shook, but I didn't move. Couldn't. Finally, he took a step toward me. His eyes. They weren't the same tired eyes I'd seen for months. Well, these eyes were filled with hunger, yes. But also confusion, like he was fighting something inside him. Why now?" he whispered. His voice cracked, almost as if he was afraid. I didn't answer. My throat was dry. My chest rising and falling faster than I could control. And then he reached out. His fingers brushed my arm, trembling. But just as quickly as he touched me, he pulled back, fists clenching. "No, this isn't right," he muttered, almost to himself. My heart dropped. Was he rejecting me? The ground felt like it was slipping beneath my feet. But then he looked at me again, jaw tight, lips trembling. "You don't know what you've just started," he said. Those words haunted me. I didn't understand them fully at first. But I would soon. That night, after I retreated to the bedroom, humiliated, confused, he didn't follow. He stayed in the living room for hours, pacing, muttering to himself. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my body still burning from the way he had looked at me. When he finally came in, his eyes were red, like he had been crying or fighting something much deeper. He didn't speak to me, just climbed into bed and turned his back. I curled up, silent tears staining my pillow. I thought it was over, that I had destroyed whatever little was left. But the next day, I noticed something. He couldn't look at me without his jaw tightening. His hands would fidget. He'd start to say something, then stop. It was as though something had shifted inside him. Something he didn't want to admit. And then came the whispers. I heard him on the phone late at night. His voice low, urgent. He'd leave the room when I walked in. And when I asked who he was talking to, he brushed it off with a cold "work." But I knew better. I could feel it. There was a secret in his chest. One he was terrified I'd uncover. At first I told myself it was paranoia, that I was just imagining it because of what I had done. But then, I saw the message. A single line glowing on his phone screen before he snatched it away. Does she suspect anything yet? My blood turned to ice. I wanted to scream, to demand answers. But something stopped me. Instead I went quiet. I started watching him more closely, studying every movement, every glance. And that's when it hit me. It wasn't just that I had reignited something that night. I had stumbled onto a fire that was already burning, one I wasn't supposed to see. That single text burned into my mind. Does she suspect anything yet? I wanted to believe it was innocent, a misunderstanding, maybe a colleague from work, maybe even a joke. But no, my gut knew better. My gut screamed the truth long before my mouth dared to say it. For days, I carried that line in my chest like a ticking bomb, watching him, listening, pretending to be the same woman he thought I was. While inside, suspicion grew teeth. Every time he avoided my eyes, every time his phone buzzed at midnight, every time he said late shift, the puzzle started fitting together. And then one night, followed him. He said he was heading to the office. His briefcase in hand, suit crisp, eyes avoiding mine. I waited 5 minutes, grabbed my keys and slipped out behind him. My heart was hammering so violently I thought it might give me away. I kept a safe distance, headlights dimmed, following his taillights through streets I knew like the back of my hand. Until suddenly, we turned down a road I didn't recognize. And then he stopped, in front of a small, dimly lit apartment complex. I parked farther down, every nerve in my body screaming. I watched as he stepped out of the car, checked his phone, and then, like a knife to my chest, a woman appeared at the door. She smiled. He smiled back. And then he walked inside. My whole world crumbled in that moment. I sat in the car for almost an hour, fingers numb, chest tight, tears streaming but silent. I wanted to storm in, to drag him out by his collar, to demand answers right there in front of her. But I didn't. Instead, I drove home. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't just about betrayal. There was something more. Something connected to those haunting words he'd whispered that night. You don't know what you've just started. When he came back hours later, I pretended to be asleep. He slipped into bed, his body carrying a scent that wasn't mine. My fists clenched under the covers. I whispered silently to myself, tomorrow I will confront him. And I did. The next evening, I waited until the kids were in bed. My chest tight, my hands shaking, I stood in front of him. We need to talk. He froze. His eyes darted toward his phone on the table. I swallowed hard, voice trembling. Who is she? The silence that followed was louder than any scream. His face drained of color. His lips parted, then closed again. You've been following me, he finally muttered. I almost laughed. The audacity. Don't turn this on me. Saw you. I saw you walk into her place. His hands covered his face. His shoulders shook. Not with denial but with something else. Something like shame. Please, you don't understand, he whispered. My anger erupted. Don't understand. I understand perfectly. You've been lying. cheating, making me feel invisible while you give yourself to someone else. And then he said it. The words that shattered me in a way I never expected. She's not just someone else, she's your sister. I couldn't breathe. The room spun. My knees buckled, and I gripped the edge of the couch to stay standing. No, I whispered. No, that's not possible. His eyes brimmed with tears. It started months ago. I didn't mean for it to happen. Swear. But after that night, after you walked out of that kitchen, something in me snapped. I couldn't hide it anymore. Felt sick. My stomach twisted. My sister. My own blood. The betrayal wasn't just his. It was hers. The woman who grew up beside me, shared secrets with me, laughed in the dark with me as little girls, had been sharing him behind my back. I collapsed onto the couch, trembling. My mind replayed every family dinner, every casual smile between them, every time she brushed past him, and I thought nothing of it. The signs had been there. I had been blind. Why her? My voice cracked, barely audible. He covered his face again. I don't know. I was weak, lonely. And she was there. My tears turned to rage. And what about me? I was here too. I begged for your attention. I tried to talk. I tried to keep us alive. And you chose her. His silence was the only answer I got. 4 days after, I wandered through the house like a ghost. I didn't eat. Barely slept. Every sound, every shadow reminded me of betrayal. And yet, something inside me still burned. Not just anger. Not just heartbreak. But that same dangerous spark that had pushed me out of the kitchen that night. I wanted answers. I wanted revenge. I wanted control. So I did something reckless. I invited my sister over. She walked in, smiling like nothing was wrong. Like she wasn't the knife in my back. My hands shook, but my face remained calm. We sat in the kitchen. The same kitchen where this all began. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, I know. Her smile faltered. Her hands gripped the chair. And for the first time in my life, I saw fear in her. What followed was a storm of accusations, tears, half-baked excuses. She claimed it was a mistake. That she hadn't meant for it to go so far. That she loved me, that she didn't want to hurt me. But her words rang hollow. And when my husband walked in mid-confrontation, the air exploded. He shouted. She cried. I stood frozen between them, watching the two people who had torn my heart apart argue as though I wasn't even there. Finally I screamed, loud enough to silence them both. You don't get to decide how this ends. I do. And in that moment I made a choice. I told them both to leave. To get out of my house. Out of my life. Out of my children's lives. My voice shook, but it carried a strength I hadn't felt in years. They stared at me stunned. And then slowly they left. The house was silent again. But this time, it wasn't the silence of neglect. It was the silence of survival. I walked back into that same kitchen where everything had started. My hands trembled as I touched the countertop, memories crashing over me. And for the first time, I allowed myself to breathe. But here's where the story takes its turn. Because just as I thought it was over, just as I thought I had closed the chapter, my phone buzzed. A single message lit up the screen. He's lying to you. It's worse than you think. Meet me tomorrow. Alone. And the sender. Not my sister. Not my husband. Someone else entirely. That's where I leave you. Because the truth. This story is far from finished. Backhand and X pointing right. Subscribe now to Secret Woman Stories so you don't miss what happens next. Like this video, share it with a friend who loves suspense, and tell us your city in the comments. We love connecting with you.